City today after two Palestinian men were arrested for plotting to bomb the city's subway system. The FBI's New York director, James Kallstrom, said the suspects were probably less than a day from executing their plan. Police shot and wounded the men during a pre-dawn raid yesterday on a Brooklyn apartment. 5 pipe bombs were discovered. New York police issued a statement saying the suspects were, quote, planning to target U.S. and Jewish interests worldwide.
This is the New York Police Department's Bomb Squad. Part human, part dog, part robot, all one team.
Lethal and indiscriminate. To disarm one is to save countless lives.
NYPD Bomb Squad has given the all clear.
One reason the members of the oldest and biggest bomb squad in the United States are unique.
Bomb Squad was able to safely remove a device.
When you don't see them, the NYPD Bomb Squad is always watching for that unsuspecting threat.
NYPD Bomb Squad racing in, then hauling away another suspicious package.
Package has been properly identified.
You're listening to Tales from the Boom Room, profiles of the NYPD's Arson Explosion Bomb Squad. I've been waiting for this one for a long time. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to a very special edition of the Mike Colón podcast, Tales from the Boom Room, profiles of the NYPD's Arson Explosion and Bomb Squad, Volume 26. Wow, Volume 26. That's crazy to say. If you haven't checked out the previous show, that was earlier today. This is the second show of a doubleheader. Charlie Gibson, the former longtime anchor of Good Morning America, as well as World News Tonight, was on the show. Good guy to talk to. Interesting career with him. So that was a good interview if you want to go back after this one, of course, and check it out. So that was the appetizer. This is the main event, like I said, Volume 26 of Tales from the Boom Room. On this job, July 31st, 1997, a simmering summer Thursday in New York City. As the sweet mid-90s sounds of the scorching season emanated throughout the 5 boroughs, something diabolical was brewing in Brooklyn. With murderous mayhem on their minds, 2 terrorists working on behalf of Hamas set out to send shockwaves through the Big Apple and, by extension, America. Their weapons, pipe bombs, their mission detonating them during the morning rush hour in the Atlantic Avenue subway, one of the city and one of the country's busiest transportation stations. Thanks to the men who join me tonight, however, and many more who could not be here, they were stopped, acting on information received via an informant. Both emergency service unit and bomb squad officers intercepted and thwarted the would-be suicide bombers through a raid capped off with first a rapid and furious barrage of bullets, and then an extremely intense but ultimately successful render-safe operation. And that, for Tales from the Boom Room, Volume 26, a very special edition of the miniseries tonight on the pipe bomb plot of 1997 in Brooklyn. I'm joined by retired E-men Joe Dolan and Dave Martinez, bomb squad detectives and former E-men in their own right, Paul Yurkiw and Rich Teemsma, and, of course, Arson Explosion Squad Sergeant Fred Manzolillo. Gentlemen, thank you for being here this evening. I appreciate it. Welcome.
How you doing, Mike?
How are you?
Thank you
Good to have you guys.
Nice to be here with you.
Nice to have, in Fred's case, and Rich and Paul's case, back on the show. You guys have been on before, returning customers, and Dave and Joe, welcome to the show for the first time. So the night itself, I have 7 shots next to me, the book chronicling that raid. It's a good book, and I got it on Paul's recommendation. So, it was a great read. I blitzed.
That was a way to understand the big picture.
Yeah, no, you were right. And it did help me understand for sure. You're in the bomb squad working a night tour. It's you, the dogs, of course, that you guys got, Richie, Kevin Barry, and Jeff Oberdeer. And then the phone rings, and Paul, you pick up the phone. Take it from there.
Yeah, pick up the phone. Is sometime maybe 1:15 in the morning, and I was a female detective, and she's telling me that they have a person in the squad room that came from a residence and was explaining in broken English that there's some people, students that were in the room and that sharing an apartment, and they had been constructing devices, and he left, and he wanted to call. Well, he wanted to advise. He found police officers in the street. I think they were transit police officers, and to advise them that, before these guys wake up, this is what they're doing. And then, the rest is history. They brought him into the squad room, the precinct.
So you guys show up to the precinct meeting, you and Rich, and you guys are saying, okay, well, let's do the raid, as 7 Shots was discussing. And one of the things that gave you guys an advantage is, like I said in the introduction, you guys are former E-men. You came over from ESU. You know how they work. They obviously know how the bomb squad works because, well, you know, they train very closely on separate drills and whatnot that we don't have to discuss because a lot of it's classified. So you pitch for them to join along in this raid, and then that brings, of course, the guys from 7 Truck into it. And Joe, I'll start with you first. When did you guys get the call about this?
Well, that night, me and Dave usually work in 6 Truck, which is Bay Ridge, Brooklyn. But that night we flew to 10 Truck, and we were on patrol in the Atom car in 10 Truck that night, which is Queens. A unique thing about the night is we only had 2 calls that night, and the first call was a grenade in the basement of a supermarket, I believe on Queens Boulevard. It was, and one of the bomb squad guys showed up. I'm not sure who it was.
Kevin Barry and Jeff Oberdeer.
There you go. They showed up and they took the grenade. And then the next thing we knew is we got a request to call the desk, the ESU desk. We got on the phone, called the ESU desk. They told us to go to 7 Truck to get the CAT car, which is a counter assault team car, and bring it to the 8-8 station house. This was all over phones. There was nothing over the radio. It was pretty quiet. We were wondering, it had a weird feeling to the night to begin with, because it was very quiet on the radio. Probably because this was going on. This had been going on for a few hours now before we even knew about it, with the intel that the bomb squad guys were gathering at the time. It was Metro North cops that they walked up to, that the complainant walked up to first, and they brought him to the 8-8 station house. The 8-8 station house, they brought him to the desk. He told the desk sergeant the story. Desk sergeant said he kicked him up to the PDU. PDU told us, he told it to the PDU. PDU says, call the bomb squad, and the bomb squad showed up. And the rest is history. Me and Dave brought the CAT car to the 8-8 station house. Upon our arrival, like I said, we still didn't know what was going on. But when you come down the block and every available Atom car in the city for emergency service is sitting at the 8-8 station house, you know something's going on, and it's not small by any means. So we went in and we were told the story of what happened. That this gentleman went into an apartment at about 9:30 at night, and he said that the 2 people in the apartment were making pipe bombs, and they were planning on blowing up the subway the next morning. And I believe he said he was going to go out for cigarettes. And supposedly they told him that, well, if you're not back in a half hour, we know you probably went to the police and we'll be ready. So all this went on. And while we were at the 8-8 station house, a team was put together. Of course, Dave volunteered first, and thanks, Dave. And then I can't let Dave go alone. He was my partner. I worked with him for 10 years, and so everybody just jumped in. After that, the team was picked, and we headed over to the location, which was actually in 6 Trucks area. It was in the 7-8 precinct. We went over to the location, and did I fail to mention that this was at 4:40 in the morning, a couple of minutes after the half-hour time limit that the guy had. So supposedly by what we heard is that supposedly they were going to know we were coming. So we showed up. We were told certain things. Dave, do you want me to still continue this story, or do you want to?
Well, actually, before you continue, John, let me just get Richie involved.
You're doing good. Keep on.
I'll go back to Joe in a second, but just Richie, because you were at that briefing too, and Dave, I'll go to you momentarily as well. Richie, what do you recall specifically from that briefing? What can you add?
Well, they had him in a room, and they had an interpreter with them, and we sat down. Paul, the 4 of us, Paul, myself, and the interpreter, and the gentleman that was giving around all the information. He described pipe bombs. We drew them. He drew it. He drew the he drew out the apartment where they were, where the pipe bombs were, and where they were, and everything else. We've pictured a little bit bigger room. It was only an 8x8 room. Or something.
Yeah, it's little tight quarters.
But anyway, we ascertained from him pretty much what was going on. I know the newscast said a matter of days, but it was a matter of hours before they were about to do this thing. So, and that's when we had called for ESU and to form a plan to go in and get this guy. So the duty captain showed up, and he listened to everybody, and then he says, I don't think we're going to do this tonight. I think we'll do it tomorrow. We begged him, please let us do it tonight because tomorrow's a post blast, and he didn't really believe it. But there was a woman inspector, and I don't know. Yeah, what's her name?
Chief Kamadama.
Yeah, well, I wasn't going to mention names, but anyway.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
But anyway,
scratch that.
Allegedly.
Yeah. Anyway, she shows up and she saw my face, and she says, "What's the matter with you?" And I said, "He won't let us do this job." And she goes, "You come with me." And Paul and I, right? We walked back in the office with her, and she went up one side of him and down the other. And I said, "This is great." And he just turned around and said, "Okay, we'll do it." And that's how the job started to go. So. That's what I remember of it, But
Dave,
that was far.
This guy apparently was an Egyptian that had just come into this country. He's trying to relocate.
Yeah.
He seemed sincere. You could see the concern in his face when he was telling us, and the interpreter was talking to us about how concerned he was about people losing their lives. Yeah. To me, the key was when the chief, we had a TAC meeting, and he looks us in the face and he goes, "You go in there and you kill this guy. If you got to kill him, you shoot him. Don't worry about nothing. If this is legit, you go in and do what you got to do, what you're trying to do." And to me, that was a critical moment, because when you hear somebody with that much authority telling you do what you got to do, then there's no reservation, there's no hesitation, And I was convinced that this guy was telling the truth. I mean, for everything the way it was, it was. I called it the perfect job the way it worked out, because everything he said was right on the money. And prior to us going there, I can't remember who was it. Johnny English that went in the cat car or an unmarked car to the location to check it out, and then they came back to confirm it.
Yes.
Yeah. Again, if I can just add on to that,
Sure.
what Dave said, I spoke to him and I asked him. I said, "Why are you giving us this information?" He goes, "Well," he says, "I believe Allah is a God of peace and not of hate." So, and I believe exactly what he was saying. I spent a lot of time over in the Mideast years ago. And I got to know these people pretty well, and most of them were just peaceful, loving people. They just want to go about their day, And this guy too, he was the same way, So it's just these other couple of knuckleheads. They just thought they were going to do something for the cause.
Joe, I'm going to go back to you in a moment. Fred, you won't be silent for long, my friend. I'm going to bring you in momentarily as well. But I just want to shout out to our friends tonight watching in the chat. And if you guys have a question for these gentlemen, fire away, and I'll get to it at the proper time. Bill Ryan's here. He's watching, as is Jay Driscoll, Joe Maliga, Megatoothed Sabres. That's a couple, Tom and Jen from Wilmington, North Carolina. Hey, guys. Billy Kennedy, Sergeant from One Truck's watching. Thank you, Billy. He says, what a great group. Patty McGee's watching, too. And Carl DeWenzel's watching. He says this for you, Joe, and you, Dave. What a crew. Miss working with Dave and Joe. Glad they prevailed that night. I learned a lot from these guys working in 6-truck late tours. So nice comment from an old buddy of yours, Carl. Thanks for tuning in tonight. Hope you're doing well. So, Joe, back to you, and pick up where you left off, my friend.
All right. The TAC meeting, during the TAC meeting, when everything was decided on what we were going to do, thing went around to take the keys and everything off your belts, so that you're not making a whole bunch of noise when you get there, because you don't want to tip these guys off, especially since we were well past the half-hour dead time, dead limit, time limit. Sorry, and so we decided that was a good idea. So we did that, and when we went down to the cat car to get the weapons, Everybody had their choice of weapons. I chose the Mini 14. Also, the entry team, normally entry teams are, if you can, which you normally never really got on the late tours, you would normally have 2 teams at the door, the boss, and then the tool guy and the door security guy. So you could have up to 10 cops doing this entry. And this team was made up of 6 because the choice was to try and keep the carnage down if this went bad, that instead of killing 10 would kill 6. So that's neither here nor there at this point, but that was the mindset. And as we were leaving the station, I turned around to Dave and I said, Dave, I said, just for the hell of it, I can't get killed here tonight. I said, not tonight. I said, because just before I left, normally I give my wife and daughter a kiss before I went to work and stuff, but my daughter had already gone to bed and I didn't get to kiss her that night. And I'll be damned if I was going to miss that ever again. So, and Dave looked at me and he says, Joey, he says, there ain't nobody dying here tonight. And I was like, all right. So we went out, got all weapons, got in the van. But just before we left, we had John English was driving, I believe. We had Mario Zorvik and Mike Keenan, me, Dave, and Owen McCaffrey was in the van, and the interpreter and the complainant was in the back. And just before we drove away, I told John to hold on. I said, I got to say something. I turned around to the interpreter and I said, I want you to tell this gentleman word for word what I'm about to tell you. And he goes, okay. And I said, I don't know if I want to go into this, but I said, I don't know. It's the statute of limits.
Edit it a little bit, clean it up.
Okay. I turned around and I told him that if we get there and this guy makes one sound to try and alert somebody, because there's supposed to be a cab service on the front sidewalk. Exactly. So you have a whole bunch of people there that can signal these guys in the building. We don't know how big this is. We don't know what's going to transpire. So I told the interpreter word for word. I said, you tell him word for word. If he gets out of his van and makes one sound, I'm shooting him first. Because I am not going to have him tipping people off in this building. And the interpreter said, really? And I said, word for word, you tell him I'm shooting him first. If he starts making a scene there. And he didn't, you could tell by the look in his face, he was not going to do that. He didn't want to be anywhere near us at that point. But he probably didn't want to be anywhere near us anyway with the job going on. Yeah. You could tell this guy was nervous. He was scared. And, we pulled up and all the people were like, it's summer night. So the whole cab stand was out in front of the building. And we got out of the van. The street had been blocked off and there was really no traffic. So we got out of the van. We put everybody down on the ground. We secured them. Other emergency guys and precinct guys secured the cabbies, and we started going in the building. But as we went in, it didn't look the way the guy described it. He had mentioned a laundry cart and a bicycle and a broken walker and stuff like that in the hall, and it didn't look that way. And we keep turning around going, is this right? Are we in the right place? Is this the right place? And the interpreter's going, yeah, he just, and the guy keeps pointing forward, but he's trying to backpedal. He's pushing as hard as he can to get out of that hallway because he didn't want to go anywhere near the apartment that we were going to. And that's also now tipping you off on this guy's, he's afraid to be there. So that's given a little more credibility and credence to the story that he had told us. And then as we went a little further, you had to step to the left to go around the staircase. And as soon as we got around that, there was the laundry cart and the bicycle and everything that he had been talking about. And then we ended up going out into a courtyard. And the building that he was in is actually another building across from the courtyard. Do you want me to continue with this, or do you want to have somebody else step in here, Mike? Or what?
Well, Dave, do you have anything that you want to add here? Because Joe's given some great detail. Don't get me wrong, Dave.
No,
is there anything?
he's dead on the money. But just to go back a little bit, we were in the cat car, and Ralphie comes and gives us this speech. You know, it's
Pasculo.
Yeah.
Speech. His heart was in the right. His heart was in the right place.
It sure was. But he gives us this speech, and I turned to Joe, and he turns at me. He goes, "Why do I feel like he just gave us our last rites?" I'm like, holy crap! You know,
I think everybody there had the feeling that this was going to go bad.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they were, because and even that, before that, we got into a thing on who was going to be on the entry team, and Joey was insistent that I be the bunker man. And they were like, "Well, why?" Because I'm the fastest guy there. I was always the lead.
Yeah, you're a runner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was at one point. And, it was like Joey said, when we got into the building, we were like a little bit confused as to what was going on in the building. But when we saw the courtyard, then it all started to make sense. And we tack up on the door to open the door.
Yeah. Well,
Joey reaches over the key.
Joe was given the key to get in the place. And Joe puts the key in the door. And go ahead, Dave. Tell him what happened. Go ahead.
He turns the key, and he looks at me like a big puppy that he is. He looks and goes, "Dave, I think I locked the door." So I look at him and I said, "Well, open the effing door and let's go." And it was, despite all that tension, despite all of what we're going through, it was a moment of laughter almost, like of all things to lock the door. And
safety first.
Yeah. The whole problem with the open door was, I kind of put myself in these guys' position that if I'm making bombs to use tomorrow, why am I leaving my door unlocked? So that kind of, while we were all chuckling about me locking the door when we're trying not to tip them off that we're coming in, and I figured that maybe we weren't going to get past that door to begin with. So, but at that point, Dave summed it up the best. We've unzipped our fly. They know we're coming, so let's go. So you got to go at that point. You can't stop now. So I shoved the door open and nothing happened. So we ended up making the entry, and it was laid out exactly the way the guy explained it. So go ahead, Dave. You can go on with this.
Yeah, Joey opens the door. We go in. I see the two individuals at the other end of the room sleeping on a cot, and the one gets up. He starts to. Abu Meza came charging towards me. I shot him, and then Lafi Khalil gets up. And we're stepping on the bomb satchels themselves. We didn't even realize it, but he lunges towards me. I hit him midair. On his lunge, he dropped like a rock. And then Joey looks down and he's like, "Holy cow, we're standing on the bombs," So at that point, we cleared them out. We dragged them out all the way to the front, dropped them on the floor, went back in, and continued clearing the building out.
So, my apologies. Go ahead, Dave.
No, we continued after that, and apparently there was, when we went in the room, there was a guy standing there, and I hit him with the bunker. I laid him right out. I just dropped him like a rock, and we went and picked him up, and then we went up to the second floor. The second floor of the basement? No, that was the second. The basement was where the kids were, the Spanish family. There was a woman with her children and all that. And here we go. We just shot these guys. We just cleared the building. We went back out to secure the building. And a few minutes later, I'm carrying out 2 little Spanish kids, talking to them in Spanish, consoling them because we scared them, and they're crying. And the mother, we went from one extreme to another in the bat of an eyelash, which was pretty unique. I mean, at the time it's all going down. You're just trying to complete the job, trying to complete the mission, but it was
Dave made that room entry sound a little more easier than it really was. Dave failed to tell you that the door to the bedroom actually swung out, so he had to be nimble to get that door open, holding a gun in a bunker to pull the door towards him. And when he did, I had Sergeant English behind me. And Dave isn't a little guy. And so he pretty much, with his vest on, took up the whole doorway. So I was standing behind him and I heard the shots, so I knew something was going on, but I really couldn't see. I guess as one of them started to move, Dave had to move to the left. And as he did, I shoved past him and got into the room with Dave. And at that point, I saw the 2 individuals that Dave was dealing with. And the guy on the right, I ordered him, don't move, don't move. And he looked at me, and then he looked down at the ground, and then I looked down at the ground where he was looking. And that's where, very dim light, there was no real light in there. The only light that was in the room was the light of Dave's Glock and just a little bit of sunlight coming through this window that had a covering on it. So it was a very dim lit room, but I could see a bag on the floor. And I looked at him, and he looked me straight in the face and lunged. And as soon as he started to move, I shot him twice. And at that point, he stopped his movement. Mini 14s have a habit of doing that to you. He ceased his movement at that point and pretty much just curled up in a ball. And we were able to now remove them. And excuse me. And Sergeant English, great line. Holy Christ, I hope there's bombs in here, because we just shot 2 people, And
big deal.
Yeah, I look down and I go, well, here's a bag that he was looking at, and we didn't open the bag. We knew better because like you said, the emergency service unit does training with the bomb squad and stuff. So we know not to be if we're on a call out for that, on a call. We know not to be jostling a whole bunch of stuff around, but our curiosity got the better of us, and we had to look at the satchel. So all I did was I looked down. I could see that nothing was hanging out, and I just moved the edge of it just enough, and we could see the end caps to the pipe bomb. And that's all I. Yeah, that I looked at, and Dave was right. I was standing on it. Yeah, I was standing. No, that's how I went through the door when I locked it. I went like that. I saw it, and Dave was right. My right foot was standing on the strap of the bag, and I looked. I could just see the end of a pipe bomb, and I looked at Sergeant English. I said, "There they are," and I just let it go. And he goes, "All right, let's go." And that's when we called the bomb squad. And from then on, that it was all theirs at that point, because we had no dealing with render safe or anything like that. What was going on in that apartment after that, we didn't know. That was up to the rest of these guys.
Fred, I'm going to get to you momentarily because you've been idle by long enough, and I want to get your perspective. But first, I want to play this PBS report from the day after the job, 1997.
We go first to the Brooklyn bomb story and to Margaret Warner.
Acting on a tip, a special team of New York City police and federal agents raided a Brooklyn apartment yesterday, shortly before dawn. Officers shot and wounded 2 Palestinian men, Lafi Halil and Ghazi Ibrahim Abu Mazer, then arrested them. Another man was taken into custody unharmed. Authorities also seized 5 powerful bombs. They said at least one of the men had lunged for one of the bomb switches before he was shot.
They would kill somebody in a area of 25 up to 25 feet in a inside confined area, and they would injure someone up to 100 feet in an outside area.
The raid disrupted life in the Park Slope neighborhood of Brooklyn. Police evacuated 90 residents from nearby buildings before storming the apartment. And 4 New York City subway lines were shut down for 7 hours, inconveniencing some 100,000 morning commuters. The apartment building where the men were arrested is just a few blocks from the Atlantic Avenue subway station. Police officials say one of the suspects later told them the station was among the group's intended bombing targets. The 2 wounded suspects are being held in a Brooklyn hospital where they are reported to be in stable condition following surgery. They were arraigned last night in absentia in federal court in Brooklyn, charged with conspiring to bomb the subway and other structures. Also last night, the FBI and the New York Police Department issued a joint statement saying the suspects were, quote, planning to target U.S. and Jewish interests worldwide. Earlier this week, a suicide bombing in Jerusalem killed 15 people. The Palestinian group Hamas claimed responsibility. This morning, President Clinton was asked if there was a connection between the terrorist attack in Israel and the alleged terrorist plot in New York.
I cannot comment and cannot reach a final conclusion yet because I haven't received a report of the direct investigation done, including the interrogation of the people who were arrested. But I think it's important not to reach conclusions before we have ironclad evidence to support them.
At another press conference today, James Kallstrom, head of the FBI office in New York, addressed the possibility that the alleged plot had international dimensions.
This isn't some simplex, armed robbery or bank robbery, not that those aren't awful crimes. It's a very complex matter that involves, global issues and foreign policy and the way people feel about other people. And it's something that, we don't jump into quickly and make determinations easily, and don't make predictions on how things are going to turn out.
Both Kallstrom and New York City Mayor Rudolph Giuliani said danger was only narrowly averted.
I think we were close to a disaster, and it didn't happen, and that's the good news.
The police, if you think about what happened in that apartment, the police officers, quite by acting as quickly as they did, probably prevented a disaster from happening there.
That's right.
Ghazi, allegedly, moved toward the bomb, was able to activate one of the toggle switches, was able to knock it down. There were 3 others left. That was, as far as we can tell, a bomb that was ready to go off or could have gone off. So by shooting him, the police officers possibly prevented a pretty bad explosion right in that neighborhood.
That report from PBS back in 1997. The Arson Explosion Squad was brought in, and it's worth noting at the time they were shorthanded. Lieutenant Jerry Sheehan, the CO at the time, later the CO of the bomb squad, on vacation, as was Sergeant John Santos. So who did that leave this job to? Fred Manzolillo. He went out to the scene. Fred, take it away.
Yes, I got invited to the party a little late. I guess when they notified me, I was at home. It had to be about close to 5 o'clock in the morning when they told me about what was going on. And I had just gotten to Arson and Explosion Squad in March. And, the 2 men that you mentioned, Jerry Sheen and John Santos, they taught me an awful lot. And I looked around, they weren't there that morning. So now it was up to me to actually start saying, oh, crap. I gotta actually do this stuff without them stopping any mistakes, because an investigation like this I knew was going to wind up in the hands of the Joint Terrorist Task Force, but they bring arson and explosion in just in case it isn't. If they some way or somehow is deemed
not a terrorist thing, then it's going to fall under the purview of an arson and explosion investigation. And also, I figured they called us for a fall guy in case things really went bad. Blame A&E. So I get the phone call. I tell guys to respond different places. I had very few detectives. It was the summertime. We're a small squad, so I had guys on vacation. So I had a couple of guys go to the scene. I had one detective respond with me over to Kings County, and I arrived at Kings County, and one of the perps was already in the operating suite, and the other one was in the ER, in the emergency room, and they were prepping him to go into an operating suite. With him, guarding him, was a night watch detective. And one of the things that the detective brought to my attention immediately was the fact that they were very interested in what time it was. And they kept on asking about 9 o'clock. And, now I needed to find out what this guy knew about 9 o'clock. So I wanted to question him a little bit. And there must have been she was a young female resident doctor that was working there. And she took exception to the fact that I wanted to question this man. And, I told her, I need to question him. I need to find out things that he knows and hopefully, prevent a tragedy. And she goes, well, I'm not interested in your job. My job is to save his life. And I told her, well, my job is to save his life too. And then hopefully it saves other people's lives. Then I don't care what you do to him. But right now, I'm going to talk to him. Well, in that same area of the emergency room was an old-time nurse. And she was standing there. She watched what was going on and knew that, well, this young doctor needed to get out of the way. So she went over there and told this young doctor that she was needed elsewhere. And she left. And then the next thing I see is an anesthesiologist or his assistant come walking over, and he says, in 5 minutes, you can ask him anything you want. So I found out that they just got came in from, they were Palestinian. They were part of Hamas. The 9 o'clock thing, I can never, get a handle on what the 9 o'clock thing was, other than there may have been another group. That was the only thing I could, kind of correlate together, because maybe there was another group that was going to go out, in conjunction with them. Because a lot of times with these cells, they work independently, or sometimes they can team up. So we had to be a little aware of that. I got the information back to the scene as quickly as possible to hope that that the guys, Paul Ritchie, for rendering safe purposes, I didn't know if the device was still at the scene or not. But we certainly didn't want to be standing there at 9 o'clock, finding out that there was another device that was going to detonate someplace. So I left the detective there until they went into the operating room. We had other detectives from Terrorist Task Force show up. So they took over at the hospital. When I got to the scene, it was Ringling Brothers. That's the best way to describe it. You're standing there and everyone wants to get their ticket punched. Giuliani, Safer, every chief on our job is standing all in one very, very close quartered group on a corner. And one of my guys that I was working with, Billy Mondor, pretty seasoned detective, standing there, and he goes, and he knew that, well, this isn't a job for a detective. This is a job for maybe a boss. He sees me, he goes, hey, Sarge, I don't know if anyone cleared this corner yet, but everyone is standing together. So I went over. I forget who I spoke to in the bomb squad. I don't know if it was Mike White or not.
He was
Mike showed up, didn't he, Paul?
Well, here's if I remember correctly, because I interviewed Eddie Hayes. Eddie Hayes was a sergeant in the bomb squad at the time. He told me he went out to the scene as basically the authority figure for the bomb squad. It might have been Eddie Hayes you spoke to.
Yeah, and I asked him, did you clear that corner where all the executive branch is standing? And he goes, that's a good question. But I went over and I told Chief Ali, who just became the chief of detectives at the time, I told him, we didn't clear this corner yet. I don't think it's been cleared. And the next thing you know, as everyone moved, at least another block or two away until the bomb squad cleared it. So at least we got the three-ring circus thinking about, well, maybe it's a good time to go back to the office. So
if I can just interject in 1 second. What you're saying is so true, because Joey and I, after the job, we're standing in front of this building for at least a half an hour. Nobody has removed us. Nobody has asked us who we are. Nobody took us to the hospital until some poor sergeant comes up and goes, what are you guys doing here? And we said, we're waiting to go to the hospital. And he looks at us and he says, you were the shooters? I said, yeah. He goes, oh my God. He grabs his driver and he goes, get them out of here right now. We were standing there looking around, watching all this chaos, this calamity around us, and nobody bothered to ask us who we were. And it was the funniest thing to see it happen. We were just, wow, what's going on? What's going to happen next? But it was like a three-ring circus. Everybody was just trying to gather all the information, and things go by. They go awry, and it's not intentional, but it was a calamity at a couple of points, man.
Then
interesting.
Well, one of the other things that I knew that needed to be done right away was secure the crime scene. Keep the entourage of the three-ring circus from parading through and trampling all the evidence. Everyone wanted to get their picture taken going in and out of this building. And I didn't even want to walk in there unless it was absolutely necessary. But I asked one of the supervising agents for the FBI to give me one of his agents, and I gave one of my detectives and had him at the doorway. And I told them, don't let anyone in or out, and don't get confrontational. Just, you got to tell them, if you go in there, we're going to have to take your fingerprints. I says, and match them up to, what crime scene is going to wind up lifting in the apartment. I says, that usually gets them a little nervous because now they're going to get ink on their nice clean hands, and that could scare them away. So it worked for a while. The circus started to thin out a little bit, and yet we had this, group of news people that are always going to hang around to the last minute, and we had a blood trail. You guys did a good job when you shot him, because there was a blood trail that came out of that building, down the hallway, outside, onto the sidewalk. And one of the bosses, one of the big bosses, well, this is terrible. We really should wash this down. I said, oh, no.
No, don't wash it down, because that's how we found the device. We just followed the blood trail.
and I says, we wouldn't want to disturb a crime scene, would we? So we left the blood alone for the rest of the day.
We should wash this down.
And then the job is run. The job is run by the guys in the trenches. That's the key thing. And I found out that the information that I did relay back about a potential another cell, apparently the FBI, the Joint Terrorist Task Force, they had, a couple of known groups that they were watching, and one was on Atlantic Avenue. And I know that they were talking about going over there and raiding that. but apparently there was no activity going on, so there was no reason to give up their surveillance of that cell at that point. The call was made that they
you can still keep talking.
Yeah. I think I'm the fuzzy head that's standing, trying to hide behind that black vehicle there. No, I'm only kidding. I know that the decision was made that they were going to wait 4 hours for the FBI's evidence collection team to come and process the scene. It took them 4 hours to get there, and you're told to stand there and watch over the scene. Other things that we were tasked to do were I sent guys around collecting plate numbers. Any license plate that was parked on a block, I wanted all the plate numbers run. Any surveillance cameras in and out of the place or on 4th Avenue, collect those tapes so that we could review them to see who else was going in and out of the building, that entire evening into that early morning hours. So, the only thing that came to mind when I first got notified that, one of the roommates walked over to a patrol car and they told him, "Wait, we're gonna get you to the right cops." I kept on thinking of Topak. The other police are coming.
Yeah. I remember that.
So then I found out it was a Metro North car. I felt a little bit better. These guys that are here tonight that I'm amongst, what a job they did. They really, truly did. Giuliani couldn't have said it any plainer and simpler. They saved lives that night, right then and there. Not in a subway station, but right in that building, because that device detonates. You don't know what would have happened besides the people in that room. Things happen. We all know things go backwards right away, but there could have been an explosion of another kind caused by that explosion. So, good job, fellas. I never really got a chance to say thank you to you, but good job.
Thank you. I'll tell you who I feel did the most tremendous job was the 2 initial cops from Metro North. And they never got acknowledged for what they did. Without them, this job doesn't happen. Without them and this guy going up to them in broken English trying to convey to them what's going to happen, and they didn't do what normal guys would do sometimes, just, end the job. "Oh, get out of here. You're a drunk. You're an idiot." They took the guy seriously, and they brought him to the 8-8. And they really were the catalyst that helped us do our job that night. And I just think they never got the accolades that they should have gotten, because without them, we couldn't do what we did.
Very true. There would have been a post blast.
Yeah. There was a whole bunch of instances that I was very surprised. And everybody here will know exactly what I say when that the ball could have been fumbled. It could have been fumbled there with the Metro North guys. They played him off. It could have been fumbled when he entered the 8-8 station house. The sergeant could have sent him out of the station house saying, "You're drunk, you're crazy." The detectives in the 8-8, everybody, took it serious enough to keep it going, to call the bomb squad, to have them come and listen to this guy, and didn't, and didn't shortchange the job itself. And you're very, very, and you're very welcome for that big blood trail that we left, because we wanted to make sure the FBI could find the crime scene, because we know how they work. They wanted nothing to do with this job.
You're exactly right.
It first started. But then all of a sudden, when this happened, you couldn't get rid of them. I'm not picking on the.
Before you continue, I'd just like to say real quick that the opinions expressed in this podcast are not the.
No, you're right on target.
They do a fantastic job. They do a fantastic job, but
the FBI doesn't do hands-on work. It's
they,
the Metropolitan Police Department. So New York City Bomb Squad will never have an FBI agent or an FBI bomb tech touch anything until after we're done with it.
Well, hang on, Paulie.
Until we render it safe.
And I'm not
just say that. Go ahead, Joe.
I'm really not. Just a chance to get involved in the very beginning, and they're the ones who washed it off as crap. It's not. That doesn't sound right. Well, that's on their front porch then. You know, they could have been in on it in the very beginning, and it would have been there.
As soon as it was rendered safe and brought to the bomb squad, Rodman's neck, they couldn't grab that thing fast enough after Rich and I rendered it safe.
The dark sedan with the guys in the black suits, they always show up after the fact.
Yeah.
And they try to spirit things away all the time.
Let me just hop in here real quick. This is a special edition of the Mike Colón podcast, Tales from the Boom Room, Volume 26. We're dissecting 25 years later, the 1997 Brooklyn pipe bomb plot. Because now we need to get into the render safe. Now, don't give anything classified away, but I preface it with page 85, chapter 3 from, of course, 7 Shots, the book by Jennifer Hunt. Richie Teemsma and Paul Yurkiw had been sitting in their truck waiting for emergency service to call them on the radio. When Martinez first fired his gun, they heard a popping sound and saw a muzzle flash coming from inside the building. Is that shooting? Teemsma asked. I think so, Yurkiw responded. A few seconds later, they heard more shots fired in rapid succession. Why are gunshots going off? Teemsma asked. Bomb squad, someone yelled over the radio. So now you have to go in on not just one device, but 2. And Paul, take it from there.
Let Richie.
I'll tell the funnier version. Anyway, I heard shots. I asked Paul, "Is that shots?" He goes, "I think so." And then we heard some more, and then we knew. But we had stripped down already because it was a very, very, very hot night, and we were going to wear our bomb suits. So all the clothes came off, and we put on our it's a coverall, you know.
No mech suits.
Yeah, a no mech suit. So we had wearing that, and I took my gun off. I put it in a bag. And he took his gun off. We went on an entry team. We trust emergency. They're going to take care of whatever. It's got to be shot, you know. So anyway, we heard the shots and we decided we're going to go in. Mario, he came out the door. It wasn't over the radio. He came out the door. He says, "Bomb squad, get in here." And I dove into my bag looking for my gun. And this is in the dark now. I grabbed the gun. I'm banging heads with Paul. He's trying to get his gun, but I got mine and I took off. Paul, like a good partner, always, he just forgot his gun and ran with me. You know?
I couldn't find it.
So I'm running through the building now and around the staircase and out the back door. And one of the guys, it was I think it was Meza. I believe it was Meza. He came through the door and said, "I'm going through it." This was the door out the front building into the courtyard. And I actually I was running so fast, we met face to face. I actually had to jump over him, and I wound up in the courtyard. Anyway, we went in and we looked at the bombs, and we told everybody, "That's it, we're out of here." You know, I saw there was 4 toggle switches, and one was thrown, and the other 3 was still in the off position. So I figured, well, we went outside, we talked over it, we talked about it, and we decided to let it cook for an hour. This way, if it heats up and it blows up, you give it an hour to do whatever it's going to do, you know. So an hour later, we went in. I took a little Polaroid camera with me. I took pictures of the whole scene, of the devices, of the room, where everything was. And,
5 pictures. 5.
Yeah, I took 5
pictures.
And I went back outside. We went back outside, and we spoke to our lieutenant. And I gave him the pictures. I go, "This is what it looks now." I said, "I can't promise what's going to look."
And then we had 3 left.
So anyway,
2 disappeared.
We went back in and we looked at it. And we started taking it apart. And I turned to Paul. I said, "Paul, do me a favor, get out of here. I don't want you in here with me." You know, I said, "I promise your mother." We've been partners. We've been partners for 20 years, on and off. I said, "I promise your mother, I would always have you survive this thing." You know, he said, but he wouldn't do it like the faithful partner he always was. You know, so he stayed in with me, which thank God he did, because I was looking at the one package, and then I wanted to get, the room was very small and everything was in our way. We were wearing these big suits, so I started to clear around the package, and there was a TV set there. I took the TV set off. It was on top of a very fancy milk crate, so for furniture. And I went to move the milk crate, and he taps me on the helmet, and I see his hand with no, because you don't really talk to each other because you have fans going on stuff. And I looked, and there was a filament line that ran off into another bag, and it was a booby trap. So I said, "Oh man!" So I said, "Okay." So I put the thing back. And we decided we're going to leave and go talk about this again. So we left, we come back in. And I told the lieutenant, I said, listen, we got a booby trap in there. It's blocking our way. He tells me, he says, well, I want you to take care of that first package first. I go, no, I'm not doing that because it's in my way. This other thing is in my way. So he thought about it, and he goes, oh, okay. I said, well, thanks a lot. I'm doing the show, So anyway, we went back in and opened up the flap. We saw everything. And we figured we're going to go with the ropes and tie it off and drag it out into the courtyard where we have a better look at it, And we can use the robot also. So we went from ropes to robots. We used all kinds of modern and old technology on this stuff. There was a staircase that came down, and I put the rope through the staircase, and I pulled the package out. He got caught up, right, Paul? He got caught up when I had to go back in. I picked up the bomb and moved it around.
Yeah, we used the traffic cone. We used the traffic cone to get around the corners. It got stuck.
Yeah. So anyway, we got it out, and I roped it so that it went upside down and dumped everything right out, so I didn't have to go through the bag. It was all wires and four big batteries, the big square batteries, and 6-volt batteries, and 4 pipe bombs. Well, the other one too, we had to take care of that. There was a pipe bomb in there, and that had match heads in it. So, but anyway, we rented that safe, and we went on to the other one. So, and we used your robot on that. The thing that saved us is after it was all over and all said and done, I took it apart and minus the explosives, and I put everything back together, all the switches, and I put electric matches in where the bombs, where they're connected to the bombs. I threw the switches, and they all went off. So I said, this guy just failed electricity 101, whoever built this thing. So he wasn't that good. They used a single ground on everything, and it just wasn't a good ground. So God loves us, and thank God the other guy was stupid, makes us look smart. So basically, that was it as far as the bomb and rendering was safe.
Because I was going to say, I remember Sergeant Hayes telling me that when he got out there, I think Kevin and Jeff were the ones that brought the robot out because they had finished up their grenade job in Queens.
Right.
And that's when they got you guys that robot that you needed. And Jeff was particularly great. Overdeer, I wish I could have got him on the show tonight.
I wish you did too.
Yeah, because I tried. He was a big help to this job because, as it was mentioned in 7 Shots, and he's busy. He's got a new job. So good for Jeff. Keep going, brother. And hopefully you can come back on the show soon. He was keeping you guys basically engaged and focused. Not that you would lose it in the situation, but remember, for context, folks, for those that may not understand the bomb squad, that suit is very, very heavy. It's 75 pounds, and I'm about 120. So you put that on me, I'm going to drop easily.
95.
95, even worse. So there you go. I would definitely drop dead if you put it on me. So it's very heavy and it's very hot. You can't be in it too long. And this is the summertime. This is not December when it's negative 85 outside. This is a heat wave, and August is usually the hottest month. So these guys are sweating, I'm telling you, profusely. You don't need to go to a sauna when you put on that bomb suit. So they would have to take breaks. I think you guys took breaks every now and then. Jeff got you water.
Took a lot of breaks.
Yeah.
Took a lot of water breaks.
Yeah, Fred was mentioning that somebody said that there was another device maybe 2 blocks away, and I think it was our second break. After, I think maybe 30 minutes, Richie could correct me if I'm wrong. After about 30 minutes, we left the seat where the device was, and we came outside and sat like on the back of the REPs, which is like a step where we could sit, and then also on the back of the bomb squad truck. So they took our helmets off and they took our jacket off and gave us water and stuff. And then we were able to go to the bathroom, and the detective comes over to me and says, just so you know, that we were just told that 2 blocks away, there's another device. We just want to give you a heads up. So I had my head in my hands, and EMT was pouring a water bottle over my head, and I'm shaking my head. I said, all right. I said, we get done with this one, then we'll have this go to the range, and then we'll respond to that location. I says, but in the meantime, I says, advise the bomb squad boss. and then he'll get back to us. But it turned out that didn't materialize, and then we got emergency service suited us back up again, got our helmets on, and went back into the location.
So, Dave, I'm going to go back to you in a second because you got an interesting tip from a friend of yours at the federal law enforcement level that you can expand on momentarily. But just at the scene itself, because Fred, I know you talked about going to the hospital and getting the valuable information there, but you did mention earlier sending a detective to the scene. Is there, and if it's classified, don't say it, obviously, but is there anything specific that was not mentioned earlier the detective you sent to the scene briefed you on when you got back to it?
No.
I remember, not to interrupt, but I remember we were told that there was detectives at the hospital talking to the attempted suicide bomber, that he wanted to give us instructions how to save the device. So I think me and Richie were like, we don't want to hear anything. He'll probably tell us how to blow ourselves up. So we don't want to go that route. We said thanks, but no thanks. I'm not sure which detective it was, but that was what we were told. I said, no, we're good with that.
Is that what you're talking about, Mike? That information?
Maybe that's not quite it, but if there's something else besides that, hey, let me know.
Well, give me a hint if I'm supposed to remember something. Because
No. I was just asking in general. I'm like, you get back there, you have a detective at the scene while you ascertain what was going on at the hospital.
Well,
the detectives.
Again, I know one thing. Working cases alongside the Joint Terrorist Task Force. At the time, John Howie was the lieutenant in charge of Joint Terrorist Task Force. Joint Terrorist Task Force was a sister squad in our division. So we used to work with them, often enough, or I should say, we used to work and they used to shadow us. And then if they thought that it was something that they were interested in, they would want to steal all the reports that we started. But I spoke with John Howie that morning, and I knew which way this was going. This was going to stay with Joint Terrorist Task Force. So there wasn't anything that I know that Kallstrom's second whip, he was there, and he was calling the shots for the FBI and what they wanted to do. But I do know that our bosses on our job knew that rendering the device safe, taking it away was going to be left to NYPD, and the follow-up investigation was going to be handled by the Joint Terrorist Task Force. So really, my guys were cut out of the loop at that point, other than you had to take the initiative. Just like I said, I know they don't do what we do. And I sent them around, do a license plate canvass, and at the time, any kind of surveillance cameras out there. We had, we had red light cameras and toll, the Easy Pass. These are all things that are just basic in any investigation that we start doing. Is make sure you have these things checked off, that you requested this information before it gets lost. I'm trying to think now if they had cell phones, because I can't remember if that question was answered, because then we would have had another lead to see if they were calling anyone during this whole this whole time period, and if that would have been a way to continue the investigation further with following up on people called by their cell phones. I wasn't given that answer if there was cell phones. I probably asked that question. I can't definitely say I did. It probably, I normally would have asked that question. So
it reminds me of a story that Billy Ryan told me a little while ago about the 93 Trade Center bombing, that he was saying, they were asking in the room, I think it was Chief Borelli, who was the chief of detectives at the time, who has the case? And Jerry Sheehan pointed over to Bill, and he's like, the kid, meaning him. And Jerry Sheehan, patted Billy on the back and said, don't worry, kid, they'll take it from you in about 10 minutes. And sure enough, that's exactly what happened. They did. 10 minutes later. Dave, before I get back to you, I read you this from the August 1st, 1997 edition of the New York Times, arrested men often seen, little known in Park Slope. Quote, They had been living in the dilapidated two-story house on the semi-industrial fringes of Park Slope, unnoticed in a shabby neighborhood where recent immigrants from a third world country, or for a third world crowd, many to a room. But just before dawn yesterday, the neighborhood looked like a war zone as helmeted, heavily armed police officers stormed the building. They arrested Lafi Halil, 22 years old, and Ghazi Ibrahim Abu Mezer, 23, both Palestinians with Jordanian passports. Abdul Rahman Mossabah, said to be an Egyptian, was taken into custody for questioning. The authorities seized a cache of pipe bombs, which, as we've talked about tonight, they said the suspects planned to blow up on a crowded subway station and a bus. Chillingly, one of the bombs appeared to be a suicide device. Investigators said the bombs consisted of 4 pipe bombs packed with nails and screws to be detonated by toggle switches the bomber would have to throw by hand. The Middle Eastern men who'd been living at 248 4th Avenue for months often dropped by the tropical market a half block away. We called Palalao, a Nigerian immigrant who runs the store. They rented boxing and soccer movies, he said, and greeted him with the Islamic invocation that means peace be with you. And the final note in that column being Mr. Singh said, a gentleman that I mentioned later in the column, said he had visited the men's shabby ground floor apartments several times. They lived like dogs, end quote, as Joe and Dave saw when they entered the apartment. That from the August 1st, 1997 edition of the NYT. So Dave Martinez had a friend in the CIA who tipped him off about just who these guys were and what they were about, and more specifically, who they were linked to. Dave, take it from there.
I got a call from my buddies saying, whatever you do, don't let them parade you around and don't say anything because we believe these guys are tied to Hamas. They also believe there was a third piece to this, but they weren't sure. And I never got more confirmation than that on it. The one thing I can say is when I shot Abu Mezer, when we made the entry into the room, he got up, he attacked me, he grabbed my pants, he tried to grab my gun. And I remember in my head, I'm going, stop. And I wound up shooting 5 times. And that's when he finally stopped. And then Joey hit him 2 more times, and that's when he just curled up the way he did. But the thing that brought this home to me more than that was the look on this guy's face. The greatest advantage that you have in law enforcement is that most people really don't want to die. Most people are afraid of death. This guy was not afraid. He smirked as he was trying to hit the toggle switches, which I didn't know that's what he was doing, and looked me straight in the eye, man, smirking, and that's when I fired into him because he was trying to take the gun out of my hand too. And I don't know how many times I thought about it, like, we were just really fortunate. That's why in my mind I always called it the perfect job. Everything went our way, not theirs. And, I attribute a lot of that to the training that we go through, the constant training, that we were prepared. We were prepared. And, my level of confidence and our level of confidence in general was always high. To beat us, you really had to go a long way because we prepare all the time for this type of stuff. Mm-hmm. And never thinking that this would actually happen,
You described it, Joe, I'll go back to you in a second. You described it, of course, in your testimony almost a year later, July 8th, 1998 edition of the New York Times. Taking the stand on the trial's second day in federal district court in Brooklyn, Officer David Martinez, a member of the New York Police Department's Emergency Service Unit, described to rapt jurors, and I think that's the appropriate word to use, how he stormed into a bedroom apartment in Park Slope, Brooklyn, just after 4:30 a.m. last July 31st. I entered the room and the individual to the right lunged at me to the right, which is where I hold my gun, Officer Martinez said. A struggle ensued, and I fired. You said it said here, at least this article said, I should say, that a total of 6 shots were fired at the 2 defendants. It's 7, really, Mazar and Halil. And the end of the article, to your point about the behavior of the gentleman who was not afraid of death, Mr. Mazar, it says in the final paragraph of the article, quote, while Mr. Abu Mazar, who refuses to stand when the jury enters the courtroom, appears to mock the court at times, his co-defendant seems dejected. Mr. Halil has appeared morose during court proceedings. He rarely speaks to his lawyer and frequently stares at the floor. And Mazar tried to escape twice, actually, in court. He tried to bust down the ceiling and get through an air shaft in there a couple of times. So this was, as to your point, not somebody afraid of death.
And he also attacked Lafi Khalil during the trial.
I did not know.
He went after Khalil in the trial.
I was on the stand when he did that.
Really?
Oh, yeah. He sent him to the hospital.
Oh, wow.
they just started fighting right then and there, and he really clawed into his skin on his face. So he was, and because I knew exactly how everything was built. I was very nervous at the beginning because I'd never been in a federal court before, so I don't know why. But anyway, when their lawyer brought out the device, the FBI made up a mock-up of the whole thing. And a big thing, big heavy board and stuff with all the pipe bombs on it. And he drops it because he was nervous too. And when I looked at him, I just smiled and said, well, you might as well relax. This guy's an idiot, So anyway, I started talking and I explained to him everything, what they did, how they did it. And then that's when they started to fight. It was a good fight, and they had to stop court and they didn't go back for a day or two, I believe. He had to get to the hospital, get all fixed up again. But
listen, if you could have a WWF championship match in the middle of a trial, why not? Why not? Just have a referee there. There you go. There you go. And then Stone Cold Steve Austin comes in. No, I'm kidding. But so Joe, I'll get back to you. Now there's always the post-job briefing, and I'll get back to Richie and Paul for their post-job briefing as well. Here you guys are in 7 Truck. This was one heck of a job, and as Dave, you just said, you guys practice for this sort of a thing all the time. And now that you have this job to go off of, this affects how you guys go about future jobs. Once everything calmed down and you guys really had a chance to dissect it, as E-men often do, without giving anything classified away, of course, what was that conversation like?
Well, first of all, I believe the briefing was actually, we went back to the 88 station house. We didn't go to 7 Truck.
Okay.
I don't think anyway, Dave. Did we?
No,
we went to the 88.
We were at the 88.
That's where the shooting investigation all took place after everything. And let me reiterate something about not taking anything away from the bomb squad. I happened to work in the bomb squad too for the last 4 years of my career, but the emergency service unit, anybody in the emergency service unit could have done this job. All right. We are not, me and Dave were not unique in this at all. Everybody in the unit is trained all the time to do this, and anybody could have done it. It was just mine and Dave's time in the barrel to do this, and that's the only thing that separated it. Just happened to be us that did it, along with John English and Owen McCaffrey and Mike Keenan and Mario Zorvik and Pasculo and McDermott. It just happened to be the people that were there that ended up doing it. And that was, I just want to reiterate that everybody in the unit could have done this. It was just happened to be me and Dave.
Richie, I'd like to say the same thing for us. Paul and I, we did that job, but anybody in the bomb squad, we're all trained same. Anybody in the bomb squad could have done that job. So we're not any different or unique from anybody else on that in the bomb squad itself.
Well, let me ask you guys real quick. Just go ahead, Richie.
Somebody? Me.
Joe. I thought it was Richie talking. Go ahead, Joe. My bad.
We had a guy in the emergency service unit, older guy, Andy Carson. And after everything at the 88, me and Dave ended up getting. We ended up at the 88. We had none of our equipment. Our REP was still there. Our vest, everything was over there. So we had to go back to the scene to gather our equipment. And we get driven over there, and we get out, and Andy Carson is there. And we get out to grab our stuff, and Andy's like, "Hey, you guys okay? You guys doing all right?" And we're like, "Yeah, we're fine." Now you got to remember the last time we saw this place was at about 5 a.m. and it was pretty dark in there. And by now, like Fred said, they had to secure the scene so that the FBI could take care of it and process the scene. So Andy says, "Hey, do you want to go in?" And this is all part of the post briefing that I'm talking about. Right. It was after the 88, but it resonates to how your vision and what you see gets distorted. And Andy says, "Do you guys want to go in?" So we like, yeah, why not? And I think Dave can attest to this. When we went into the apartment, we didn't realize how small it was, how tiny this whole thing was. It was very small. It seemed bigger at the time that it was going on, but it was very compact. And for all those shots to be going off, especially with a long gun, and nobody getting hurt from that, going through walls and stuff, that was great. But Andy Carson on the way in, as he's walking us in, the FBI crime scene tech says to him, "You guys can't come in here." And he goes, "What do you mean?" They said, "Well, you guys can't come in here. It's a crime scene." And he looks at her and he goes, "Dear," he says, "these two were in here before everybody else. They can go anywhere they want." And I started laughing, He says, they're the reason you're here. So we went in and we just saw how small it was. And it was, the mattress on the floor in the bedroom took up almost the whole floor. It was really tiny. And I thought it was much bigger than it actually was. So we're lucky that even though it was small, we're lucky we got to the bedroom as quick as we did, because there were some obstacles in the kitchen area. There was a table and stuff like that. So we're lucky we got to where we did. They had, I guess, maybe locking the door didn't tip them off, because if they had a little more time, I couldn't see him having a problem getting to the bag again, because it was so it was almost at their feet. So it was actually pretty tight, and that just goes
how you remember it, But that room was minuscule.
Yeah.
When we went in, it seemed like it was a warehouse, and then you go back and we looked at it, and it was 4 or 5 steps. It was tiny, man. Just blew you away.
I'm more offended by them putting a TV on top of a milk crate. That's what really bothers me in this whole thing. How dare you waste a perfectly good milk crate like that? Anyway.
It's free.
That's true.
One thing I want to say is, did anyone check, are these guys still in or are they out? They should be out.
Well, Khalil, I was going to say, I have this here.
He's out.
From Khalil was acquitted. This is from the BBC UK website of July 24th, 1998. A jury in the United States has convicted a Palestinian immigrant of plotting to explode a bomb at a subway station in a Jewish neighborhood of New York last year. At Mezer, this is in 98, he was sentenced in March of 99 to life without parole. He'll be in until the day he dies. But however, his co-defendant, Lafi Khalil, was acquitted of all charges concerning the bomb plot. I think the only thing they got him on was immigration fraud.
Yep. 3 years.
He got 3 years. He did 3 years for immigration fraud. I think he was deported after that. So that was about it. Yeah, a couple more things, and this has been a great show tonight that I want to touch on. First, before I get to those things, I'm not going to play the whole clip because it's about 7 minutes long, and we don't have that kind of time, but I'll play a little bit of a Howard Safer interview regarding the intelligence he got from this operation, of course, post-operation. This is on PBS once again in 1997, and he's cantankerous as ever.
Joining us now is New York City Police Commissioner Howard Safer. Commissioner, thanks for being with us. What more can you tell us beyond what we just heard about the dimensions of this plot?
Well, it's something that we're really going to have to investigate. We took almost a mountain of material out of the apartment yesterday, and we're going to just have to wait and see what it shows us. It's mostly in Arabic. It's going to have to be translated. The New York City Police Department, with its federal partners and the FBI, we have the Joint Terrorist Task Force here, and it's just something we're going to have to run lead by lead.
So lots and lots of written material, you're saying?
That's right.
And then the bombs themselves, these devices, were they sophisticated devices?
I wouldn't call them sophisticated, but they certainly were very dangerous. We had a computer signature done of them, and they would have killed anybody within 25 feet within a confined area, and anybody within 100 feet outside would have been seriously injured or killed.
Now, they've been called suicide bombs. What leads you to that conclusion, or do you agree with that conclusion?
Well, we're not commenting on the exact configuration, but clearly these individuals intended to take these bombs onto a subway train, set them off, and the probability is that they and many others would have been killed.
And is it true that there were no timing devices on them, or?
Well, I'm not going to go into the actual configuration because this is evidence that's going to be needed for the prosecution.
And then what tells you that, as Mr. Kallstrom said earlier, that this could have happened within a day? How do you know that?
Well, we've developed a lot of information. I mean, it was clear to us that these individuals had built this bomb and intended to use it probably yesterday or today.
Now, let's look at the question that the President was asked to address today, and I just wonder whether anything you can tell us about, have you uncovered any evidence linking this or these suspects to what happened in Israel this week?
We have a lot of work to do. We're going to have to talk to foreign countries, to the Israelis, and to a number of other countries and services of other countries, as well as to go through all of this material. I'm hesitant to speculate until we really know.
But when you issued this statement, or your department in the FBI last night, that you'd uncovered, quote, evidence that they intended to target Jewish and U.S. interests worldwide, what was that evidence, or how widespread did you think it was going to be?
My concern is, of course, with New York City, and the FBI is looking at the worldwide implications.
I see. Now, there is a report on the Reuters wire this afternoon that law enforcement authorities say these suspects made frequent phone calls from phones in local neighborhood stores to various Hamas organization offices in the Middle East. Can you confirm that?
I'm not going to confirm it. All I can tell you is that we have thousands of telephone numbers to track down. That's exactly what we in the FBI will do, and we'll see where they lead.
Okay.
All right, so that's Howard Safer in 1997. And to your point, Fred, earlier about the phones, maybe that answers your question about whether or not they had phones and if they were making calls.
Yes, it does, yep.
Regarding that. So, I guess now, and I'll get to the final conclusions and reflections 25 years later momentarily, but for Paul and Rich, 3 years earlier, you guys had another subway job with the Eddie Leary attempted subway bombing. You worked that with Brian Toohey and the late Danny Richards, who got killed on 9/11, of course, in the line of duty. And, you had some recall with that. It wasn't that long ago. And now you have this, where even though they never got to the subway, thank goodness, thanks to the work that you guys did, and that was still the target. Even for as crudely as these devices may have been made, you saw what Leary was able to do in '94. He didn't kill people, but he injured a lot of people. What would these devices have done? Could they have caused, not just what the damage that Safer and Giuliani described in that press conference, could it have caused even more?
Well, before I answer that, thanks for putting Danny's picture at the beginning of the show. He should be here also. But anyway, as far as that job went, Ed Leary he was just a sick person. He was a sick guy, and he was making these fire bombs, and just to extort money from the transit. He had built one and went off in Harlem, and he injured 2 teenagers with that. They picked it up and they were looking at it, and that's when it went off on them. So, but they figured the kids did that, and not him. So he built another device, and this was this one went off between his legs. Thank God, this guy's he wasn't all that smart. He was very smart computerized.
He was smart with this,
but not with bombs. But what that device was mostly gasoline. He had some other things in there with it, and some fragmentation. But it was going to go off as a firebomb, and he had a timer in there, kitchen timer. And the way you set these things off is you got to turn it past a certain number of minutes before the hammer cocks back and stays there. And he didn't realize that. And he had it wired where once the bell and the hammer for the bell were wired, and once the hammer hit the bell, that completed the circuit, and the thing went off. Well, he turned it to 5 minutes, and he didn't turn it enough. So it was still cocked. It wasn't cocked at all. It was on the bell itself. And then the last thing he did was connect the battery. So he put the package down. Between his legs, he bent over and he connected the battery. And once he did that, it went off between his legs.
So my point being, not to cut you off, even with the mistakes he made, he injured a lot of people. So you come back 3 years, 45 people. So
But had it gone off 5 minutes like he wanted it, that would have been in the tube in the subway itself, and the whole car would have been filled with fire, and he would have killed just about everybody in that car.
So here you have a guy like that has no knowledge whatsoever of how to put together a device that came that close. Now you have these guys 3 years later who have a little bit more sophisticated training. Maybe they're not Ramsey Youssef level, but a little bit more training.
Yeah.
What do you think, looking back, that they would have been capable of with how they constructed that bombs? What kind of damage would those pipe bombs have done had they gone off?
In the subway?
Yes.
Oh, they would have killed everybody aboard that train because it was a confined area. Once you confine the blast to an area, the whole thing is filled with the blast pressure. Mm-hmm. So maybe some people would have survived, but they wouldn't be hearing right now. So,
Paul, anything you want to add?
Well, with the O'Leary case, if that device would have functioned the way it was designed and it was in the tube, I mean, you stand on the platform and the train's coming through the tube, you could feel that blast of air. Well, that blast of air would have sent it right through the entire train, and it would have incinerated everybody. So just turned out that because of his mistake, because he was so stupid, we looked so good, and it didn't happen as bad as it could have.
So just to quickly expand on that, like I said, you guys got this operation 3 years later, remembering the Leary case. Now you have these two guys that, had they put those pipe bombs in the subway, would have done a significant amount of damage. Just before I get to the concluding thoughts, Paul, how did this change at all operations in the bomb squad?
The O'Leary case or the
Hamas case of '97
in Brooklyn, the Brooklyn job.
Yes.
How did it change things?
How did it change things going forward with how you guys trained? I mean, you guys train all the time as it is. You guys drill and discuss things all the time as it is. But how did this particular job shape how you guys went about things for the rest of the '90s?
To be a little bit more precise, to be diligent in what we did. If there was something that we can improve on, whether it was just tactics or just the pictures itself. I mean, the Polaroid pictures that Richie took at the time, it's a Polaroid picture. How good could it be? But we were able to see that filament line in those pictures to look for it when we went in there to render it safe, to remove it. So I guess it was a learning experience for everybody, in and out of the house.
Well, we're about at the hour and a half mark, so it's time to start reeling this baby in, and it's been a heck of a show with you guys. So we'll now go to the reflections. 25 years later, here we are. A lot's happened since this job, of course. There was 9/11. There was the attempt on Times Square in 2010. You had a bomb go off in Chelsea in 2016. And again, I think there was a attempted plot in 2017. A lot has gone on, not just in New York, but worldwide. So looking back at this job in that context, 25 years later, Fred, I'll start with you. Now that we're past the quarter century mark, I should say, how do you reflect on this job?
Well, just to light that terrible thing that happened on 4th Avenue with that crazy guy that started shooting people. Mm-hmm. My first thoughts were right back to '97, where I was standing not that far away from where that incident was taking place. But, you have public outcry. Cameras. What the heck is cameras going to do to save people? It's always old-fashioned police work that prevents things. Intelligence is so key. Like Dave had brought out, those two cops sitting in a radio car, not just brushing off this guy that wanted to actually save the day. The sergeant at the 8-8 who just didn't throw it out of the station house and saying, go take care of this someplace else. And then the follow-up on it, again, we probably, the six of us will never know how much intel really came out of what Safer was talking about. It's beyond our pay grades, but I'm sure they did, get intel to at least to where these guys would, where their handlers were, maybe where they were training, and hopefully, police work like that, real detective work, really pays off in the long run in preventing things that you don't read about in the newspaper. This made the headlines. It's one of the few that do. if we do our job correctly, it never hits the headlines. So again, kudos to these guys because they prevented a lot of people. There's so many people tonight sitting down with their families that don't know how close they came not to be there. You know, how many children, because this happened not many years ago, how many children are born by people who may not have been able to have children because they would have perished that day. So the ramifications of what would happen that night go beyond just two guys in an ESU truck taking out the perps before they detonated the bomb, two guys from the bomb squad who rendered it safe and protected the people in the surrounding areas, and the investigators that followed up all the leads. So I was always proud of the way NYPD trains for things, reacts to things, and more importantly, the debriefings always helped in the future to keep us safe. The debriefings were very, very key in making us go home to our families. So that's my reflection.
And this was your welcome to the Arson Explosion Squad moment. You know, once you got through this job, everything else was gravy, I imagine.
Piece of cake.
Exactly. Joe?
Well, I'm glad we survived it. That's one reflection, number one. Number two, it changed the outlook of emergency, I think, in a little bit. In one way, Carl Russo had summed it up. He said, when we were talking to him after it, he says, well, if you had told me a couple of years ago that this unit would have made a room entry on people armed with bombs and got into a shooting, he says, I would have told you were out of your mind. So it kind of changed the outlook on you just never know what you're gonna get, and nothing is out of the realm of possibility on how to handle something. A lot of the times before this job, it would have been, depending on the bosses that were there, it would have been stand outside the apartment and wait for these guys to come out and take them out in the street, take them down in the street. But that opens up a lot of different avenues that they can run into another building, set off the bombs anyway. The way it was handled was the way that job should have been handled. There are other ways to have handled it, but the way it was handled was the way to handle that job. But it depended on the bosses that were calling the shots that night that let that job go the way it did, and they trusted us enough to handle it the way we had to. And the reflection is that I think the job made the unit more aware of what was coming down the road, and that was the job that I was only interested in two things in the police department, and actually only one thing for a long time, which was getting into emergency service. And it was tough to get into that unit, and I loved every minute of it that I was there. And then when I saw the bomb squad guys working and stuff, I was like, wow, that's interesting stuff right there. But after this job, to me, I was like, well, if this is the way this is going to go, and this is the new stuff we're going to have to be dealing with, I want to be part of that. And that's why I put in to go to the bomb squad and was lucky enough to get there for 4 years. So I actually did in my career, I got to the two things I actually wanted to do: emergency service and the bomb squad. So in
Truck 11, baby.
Huh?
Truck 11, baby.
Yeah. It sure was when I went in, because I went in there with 7 other guys from emergency. But in my reflection was it kind of changed the trajectory of my career. And then, I ended my career in the bomb squad. So I was more than happy. My career went very well. I survived a lot of stuff in that career. So that's my reflection. It worked out as good as it could. So
I concur. Go ahead, Dave.
I concur with everything the guys just said. For me, it just proved to me that I was always headstrong on training, shooting. I'd go to the range, guys would want to run home. I wanted to stay. I wanted to be proficient at what I did because you never knew. And it kind of taught you to not take any job for granted or think that it's a BS job, because that's the one that's going to get you killed. And it just validated my beliefs in constant training. And I think that ESU became better from it because they got more into training and how proficient you have to be in order not to be a victim. The idea is never to be the victim. And the more you train, the better prepared you are, the more attentive you're going to be. So you don't take anything for granted. And like Joey went to the bomb squad, and I went to the intelligence division because I felt that if I went there, maybe I could prevent this by doing cases, research. It was a different venue doing the same job, but it really changed my opinion of the job, and I loved every minute of it. I think we were very, very fortunate that night. God was watching over us, and I have to say thank you to the guys in the bomb squad, because any job that we had in emergency services, whether it was Paulie or Richie, anybody, we knew that they had our backs, and they were a great comfort knowing that you had the support of your brothers that were there. Huge difference. That's one thing that you leave this job with, that the camaraderie never goes away. Never.
Richie?
Well, I tell you, I love the job, the whole job, and I was raised by a cop. My father was a cop, so I grew up with the job, so I just loved it. And it took a while for me to get on it because of all the fiscal problems New York was having, all that. And by 1982, I was 32 years old, and I went on the job. So I always wanted to do it. The reason why I got on at 32 was because I went in the military, so they gave me more military time. I was in the Marine Corps. They told me all about training, so I had the deepest respect for training. And once I got into ESU, there was a lot of training there. I took it all seriously. And we worked with a bunch of great guys in there. Everybody, like he talked about the camaraderie of the whole unit, and still is. Every September 11th, we all go out together, and we don't go out to the city, right? We go to everybody's grave. We drink a shot of Irish whiskey, dump the shot on the grave. We talk about whoever's there, in the grave, and we move on. And just a couple of weeks ago, I went to a party. There was 12 members of ESU in there. Sat around, we talked just like old times. So it was a family more thing to me. And I love the ESU. But I said, you know what? I think I could do the bomb squad. So I'm very mechanical, so I can figure things out really quick as far as that goes. So I thought I would be able to help with that thing. So, and plus I wanted to be have grade. but otherwise, I just love the job. I love the people in it. And they're really always good relationships. Still do. So I'm happy I was on the job.
Paul, bring us home.
So just to commend emergency service, when they went after bin Laden, they trained for months. They scoped out the location where he was at, the residents, how many people, how many men, how many women, how many children, on, and they train. And here you have a unit, tactical unit in New York City Police Department emergency service. Here it is at 1:30, 2:30 in the morning. They get a phone call, and now it's like time to perform. Cold.
Anytime, baby.
And that's right, anytime, baby. And they responded, and they were briefed, got the location, got the spec of the area, what was involved, how many devices, we weren't sure. But from what this individual drew a picture of a pipe bomb, and when I looked at Richie and Richie looked at me, I said, "That's the best pipe bomb drawing I've ever seen." So this guy's got to be on target, and turned out that it was like a mechanical machine. Everything worked well. Guys were taken out, and they were neutralized. They were removed, and we were able to do what we were trained to do. And would I do it again? Most likely.
In a heartbeat.
In a
heartbeat. And,
wouldn't change a thing.
With Richie being there, you know, it was a lot of motivation, and we got it done. Toward the end of the job, before we removed everything, we came out. I don't know. I think it was our last break, and we got our jackets taken off, a helmet. We got some water. We took care of a business and got suited back up again. And one of the bosses says to me, he says you don't need to go back in there. I says I started the job. I'm going to finish it. And then Richie and I just turned around and walked back into the location and just removed the pipes. And TCV was there. All emergency service guys. What we thought they did. So anything that mechanical, getting the suit on, getting the suit off, getting the TCV ready, getting the cradle out for the devices, everything worked well. And like the guys in ESU said, that training. And sometimes you see some of these jobs in different locations in other areas throughout the country or throughout the world. Jobs didn't go right. Sometimes you could look at the job, not to be a Monday morning quarterback, but you could say training might have took care of that, and they might have been able to do a better job. So I commend you guys from ESU.
Yeah.
My reflection. Sorry, somebody. Go ahead, Fred.
Just one quick thing. You guys, and I'm sure my sentiments are felt the same by you. We're privileged. You know, people say it's the greatest show on earth, but NYPD is the show. You know, we're in they make television shows around these things. Mm-hmm. And we're the actors. We're the real life actors in these things. And this was an episode that if they did it in an hour, it would look very routine. But again, like Paul just said, they did it in the E-men, they trained for this stuff. They trained for it, but every situation is different. So no matter how much you train, there's always going to be that unexpected variable in it, and you have to be sharp to know that you're able to adjust yourselves to it. So again, I commend all four of you. Thank you very, very much.
Thanks, Fred.
Thank you.
I just want to say one more thing. If there's ever a perfect job, this was it.
As Dave said, yep.
Yeah.
My reflection, I guess, 25 years. I mean, I wasn't around. God, I wasn't even born yet. Not to make you guys feel old, but I'm 22.
Oh. I don't need that to feel old, dude.
22. Oh my goodness.
I'll be 23 next February.
Rich and I retired 20 years.
I was crawling around in diapers. But first things first, I mean, you guys did an excellent job.
Okay, we'll go with that.
You guys did an excellent job. And the other thing is, I just want to thank you guys tonight, and stick around, and we'll talk off the air. And really all the guys that have come on, because, really, you guys tell me some great stories. And that's the thing I'm glad about. You guys have just really let me into the ESU/Bomb Squad world. And you tell me these things without reservation, and you trust me enough, which I greatly appreciate, to share these things with me, both off air and on. So thanks, guys, for all the work that you guys have done over the years and being so willing to come on.
Next time we got to do the UN devices.
Yeah, we did that show. Remember, it was you, Richie, and Don Sadawi.
We touched on that. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a good show.
There was nothing about that. There was no, there was nothing much in the newspapers or the news.
Yeah, barely any press, except for that week. There were some articles that week that had happened, and after that, as Don said, they kind of played hush-hush with it, and that was an interesting show for those of you that want to go back and watch a previous volume of Tales from the Boom Room. But thanks, guys, for always being so willing to share these stories on the show. Coming up next, and thanks to everybody that watched tonight, and like I said, gentlemen, don't sign off yet. Stick around. We'll talk off here. Coming up next on the Mike the New Haven podcast for episodes 199, parts 1 and 2. You guys work with these gentlemen that I'm about to mention. Bill Kennedy, who's in the chat tonight, he'll be on. Sergeant out of 1 Truck, and did some time in 7 Truck 2 and STS. He'll be here. for another volume of the E-Men inside the NYPD's Emergency Service Unit, and August 9th for episode 199, part 2, the man they call Ziggy, for another volume of Tales from the Boom Room. Steve Burbridge will be here, so that should be an interesting show with Steve. I look forward to interviewing him. In the meantime, on behalf of Rich Teemsma, Paul Yurkiw, Fred Manzolillo, Dave Martinez, and Joe Dolan, I'm Mike Colón. This has been a special edition of Tales from the Boom Room, profiles of the NYPD's Arson, Explosion, and Bomb Squad. And we will see you next time. And since 4 of the 5 guys on the panel tonight are former E-Men, I'm going to say it as the E-Men like to say. Anytime, baby. Take care. Have a great night.
Bye.